If you've ever noticed that you don't just experience things, you analyze them, replay them, and quietly take them apart in your mind long after they happen, you're not alone. Some people can move through a conversation and forget it within minutes, but for others, the moment keeps unfolding in their head. The tone someone used, the pause before they replied, the meaning behind a single sentence. And most of the time, people who think deeply like this don't even realize how differently their mind works compared to others. Because to them, this level of thinking just feels normal. You might notice it in small moments, rereading a message before sending it, then reading it again, thinking about how it might sound from the other person's perspective, wondering if a certain word could be misunderstood. Or after a conversation ends, your mind quietly goes back through it, almost like reviewing a scene from a movie, not to judge yourself necessarily, but to understand it. People who think deeply about everything often have a mind that is constantly looking for patterns, not just in situations, but in people. You notice shifts, small emotional signals, things that others might brush past without thinking. And because of that, your brain rarely treats things as simple. A comment isn't just a comment. A reaction isn't just a reaction. There's always a layer underneath it that you're trying to understand. But here's something interesting. A lot of people assume deep thinking comes from intelligence alone. And sometimes it does. But more often it develops from something else entirely. Experience. Especially experiences where understanding people became important. For example, growing up in environments where emotions were unpredictable or where reading the room mattered more than speaking in it. In those situations, the mind quietly learns to observe before reacting, to think first, to analyze, to anticipate. Over time, that becomes automatic. So now, even in calm situations, the brain still does what it learned to do long ago: scan for meaning. And that's why people who think deeply about everything often notice things others miss. The slight tension in someone's voice, the difference between what someone says and what they actually feel, the mood of a room changing without anyone saying it out loud. It's a kind of awareness that doesn't always turn off, but it also comes with something else people don't talk about much: mental replay. You might find yourself thinking about conversations hours later, not because you're obsessed with them, but because your brain is still processing them. It's almost like your mind wants closure. It wants to understand the full picture. And here's where it gets interesting. Most people think deep thinking is about worrying too much. But the real reason isn't always worry. Often it's about control, not control in the way people usually imagine, but emotional control. When your mind analyzes situations deeply, it's often trying to predict outcomes, trying to make sense of people, trying to reduce uncertainty. Because uncertainty can feel uncomfortable for a brain that has learned to pay attention to everything. So instead of reacting quickly, your mind slows things down. It studies the moment. This is why people who think deeply about everything are often quieter in group settings. Not because they don't have thoughts, but because they have too many at once. While others are speaking, your mind might already be considering different interpretations of what's being said, what the intention might be, how it connects to something that happened before, whether there's something unspoken behind it. And sometimes that makes you hold back, not out of fear necessarily, but because you're still processing. Another thing that often happens is emotional depth. People who think deeply don't just analyze events. They also analyze feelings, their own and other people's. You might notice when someone's energy changes slightly, when someone says they're fine but doesn't really mean it. You pick up on emotional details that most people overlook. And over time, this can make you feel a little different from others. Not better, not worse, just different. Because while some people move through life reacting quickly, your mind is often moving in slower, deeper layers. Thinking, reflecting, connecting things together. Sometimes this is why people who think deeply also enjoy being alone more than average. Not because they dislike people, but because quiet environments give their mind space to process everything it has absorbed. When there's constant noise or stimulation, the brain doesn't get that space. So solitude becomes less about isolation and more about mental balance. Another pattern that shows up is something many deep thinkers notice but rarely talk about. You tend to remember moments that seemed small to everyone else. A sentence someone said years ago. A reaction someone had that felt slightly off. A moment where something didn't quite add up. Those details stay with you. Not because you're trying to hold on to them, but because your brain naturally records emotional meaning. It's like your mind is building a map of people and experiences over time. And that's also why deep thinkers often become very good at understanding human behavior. You start noticing patterns, how certain personalities react under pressure, how people change depending on who they're around, how some words mean more than what they appear to say. Once you begin seeing those patterns, it becomes hard to ignore them. And this is the part many people misunderstand. Thinking deeply about everything isn't always about overthinking. Sometimes it's about awareness that developed slowly over time. Awareness